Neil, how you doing?
Make sure you mention no further content and that the council members are limited to 5 minutes.
I'm not going to say the 5 minute thing, but
You
Mr. President, please
Russ, are you ready?
put that in trash. You're going to need that 5 minutes before the night's over. There's only an outlet down front on the floor.
I don't think there's an outlet over here.
It's right out front.
Just for a few
This
minutes.
room
It
is
doesn't
so
have the right box,
excellent.
though. I may have to change it up. I found the right box. Yes.
Hey, Eve, how you doing?
Is everybody ready?
I think so.
I'm just gonna watch it just in case I get a text message. Bob, are you ready?
Come on in.
I mean, Bob Hope just walked out. I mean,
What's going on? Sit down.
We're going to call Akron City Council special meeting to order. I'm going to ask if the clerk will read the roll.
Freeman, Fusco, Hoke, Kamer, Keith, Kilby, Milkovich, Neal, Amobian, Samples, Sims, Somerville, Swirsky.
Thank you. Our special meeting on tonight was called on behalf of Councilman Russ Neal and also Councilman Kilby. Just as a reminder, during this special meeting, the only subjects stated in the notice are the only things that we will be discussing, okay? Out of respect for all council members' time, we're just going to ask if council members would just please be brief. We do want to allow an opportunity for all council members to engage in discussion and also have questions answered. So we're going to ask that you please be brief. And at this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to refer to those who call the special meeting. So Councilman Kilby, if you will please let us know what you intend to have achieved at this meeting on tonight.
Mr. Kilby, speak into the microphone, please.
Okay, I have, there's one lady in the audience that came down there. Are we going to have the public speaking tonight or no?
There will be no public comment on tonight.
All right, well, this lady, I think she's been down before. She lives in the Mayflower, and she's concerned with the buses, so I think we heard from her before, but let's cut right to the chase. What this is about, okay, we have a proposal, and the minority on this council, and the majority has one too. And we could not reach 2/3 to put it on the ballot the easy way, so both sides are circulating initiative petitions at this point. Now, ours, I don't know, I think everybody here knows what both would do, and I don't really think we need to argue about or even debate it. We pretty much know what both would do. And briefly, if you don't know what ours would do, ours would be something that would save $200,000 every time we elect the mayor and city council, much more than what the mayor's proposal would save. It would also increase participation even more, because it would do away with the primary system completely. There wouldn't be a May or a September primary. There would just be one primary in, there would be no primary. There would be a general election in November, and that people would get their name on the ballot by getting people to sign their petitions. And then it would also, just like the mayor's proposal, ensure the overseas ballots for the general. Now, we thought this was a reasonable compromise because it fulfills every single concern. It satisfies every single concern that the mayor's proposal brought up, and it also satisfies our concern about not doing away with the summer campaign. Actually, ours would also ensure not just a summer campaign if you wanted to do it, but all the way through the fall. All right, now, what we're proposing is right tonight, we could dispense with the whole initiative process, and if our side has already agreed, if the other side wants to vote for ours, we'll vote for yours. We'll put them both on the ballot tonight, and we could dispense with the entire initiative process. Now, you know, we're gathering signatures, and we're probably going to make it, and I think the other side's probably going to make it. So this is what's going to happen anyways, but we can save a lot of time and a lot of effort just by putting both on the ballot tonight. And I'm willing to do that. And it would save a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of time, and let the big cry at the end of the last meeting, let the people decide. Well, let's let the people decide. We'll put them both on the ballot and let the best proposal win. And that's what we'd like to do. And you know, I don't think we need to discuss like the merits of one or the other. If you want to, go ahead. I'm not going to stifle free speech, but I think we both know what both of them would do. If you're paying attention, that's our job to pay attention and educate the people out in the neighborhoods. And but you know, that's what this is all about tonight. That's why we call it a special meeting. And the Rules Committee never ruled on the other proposal. They actually, the mayor's office pulled it. And so it was never really, it wasn't going through the process. It was just pulled from the Rules Committee. And we always, our side always wanted a compromise. But we were adamantly opposed to the way things were in the mayor's. So I think this is a reasonable compromise, and especially if, you know, we put both on the ballot, then we'll really let the people decide, like everybody was saying a couple weeks ago.
Thank you, Councilman Kilby. Any other comments? Any other Councilman? Councilman Fusco?
Yes, thank you, President Somerville. Excuse me. We had discussed, I don't recall whenever this was first introduced, I want to say 6 weeks ago, perhaps. And I know that there was some discussion amongst some of the council members before that, and that it was kind of common knowledge that this was coming in. I know that there was discussion with some folks that work at the board of elections in terms of the problems that they have had in the past.
Jeff, why don't you speak into the mic a little bit closer, if you don't mind. Everybody.
I did not hear as you. You know, a couple weeks ago, whenever we first discussed this, and you know, I do recall, you know, that there was a lot of, there was an opportunity for a discussion about this particular proposal in terms of eliminating a primary altogether that's been on Akron's books probably for 65, 75, 80 years. And the problem with that one, I feel, is that you're taking information away from the voters in terms of party affiliation. And I think that's important for people to have that information. Hence the reason for a primary. And that's why we have primaries, so people can have that affiliation. They understand where these candidates are in terms of their views on government. And so with that, and as I mentioned, this was discussed. We had several meetings. The Rules Committee did talk about this. And with that, I'm going to recommend that we, short of any other comments, if there is, then I'll stand down. Thank you.
Yeah, I just had one comment. I couldn't help but notice throughout the last couple weeks there's been back and forth emails with Councilman Russell Neal and also our law department as it relates to item number 1 on our special notice and the issue or possibility of there being some legal issues. And so I don't know if maybe better for law to speak to, have those issues been resolved. I know that I was handed a piece just as I walked out. So just kind of wanted to get that opinion from the law department just moving forward, if possible.
I'm not sure which piece we're speaking of now because I understand that something else was prepared. I do know that Mr. Neal had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Angeloni this afternoon concerning the law department's ongoing review of the originally submitted proposed ordinance. So I'm not sure where we are because I understand something else was amended or, just prepared just now. So I'm not certain what we have before us.
Okay, so again, I guess
to answer your question with respect to the originally proposed ordinance, I know that review is ongoing, and I know that Mr. Angeloni had an opportunity to speak with Councilman Neal this afternoon concerning questions and ongoing, review.
Okay, so again, I'm just going to ask the question again. On item number 1, the original piece that was attached in our notice, have the legal issues been addressed?
Not fully, no.
Okay,
No.
That's all I need to know.
Okay.
Councilman Neal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I do want to thank Mr. I've been pronouncing your name wrong because I've been saying Angelini. If it's Angeloni, I apologize. For contacting me today and sending me in writing what I had requested a couple weeks back. I was able to get it today. Should have been able to get it a couple weeks back because all I was asking for, highlighted, noted what the concerns were. But be that as it may, I got it. Okay? What I gave to him and what I haven't passed out yet is just the changes, and there were some in terminology that were changed in the legislation. But I want to put this in proper context. We have not had 6 weeks to discuss this issue. This came before us during the month of July. We went into recess at the end of July. When I heard of this, I reached out to the Democratic Party chair, Mr. Tom Bevan, who said at that time he had heard he wasn't involved in the process. It was after my conversation with him that following Monday, the legislation came in, and I believe, Mr. Fusco, you did say, hey, sorry, didn't know, but this is coming in today. So we have not had 6 weeks to discuss this. We've had less than 3 weeks. And I want to put this into context. We have taken months, if not years, to discuss things like bike lanes, community gardens, bees. We've taken months and years. We've got a piece of legislation that's been on there for over a year, and we're still talking about it. Here we have a change to the city's charter that was brought in, and we had less than 3 weeks to discuss it. Now, it was still in committee. The committee requested to take time. Why do we take time? So that people can find more information, get more information. We could talk our parts out. Never voted out of committee. And then all of a sudden, we find out that there's a petition drive to take it out. So basically, the legislative process was hijacked. It's almost about the same thing that happened when we had the Indigenous Peoples Day legislation that came in. Didn't want to talk about it, ceased discussion, and that was it. That is a bad precedent to set. Here we had this in committee. The committee took time. And we've had discussions about this around the table, and the committee vets it before it comes out to council as a whole, so that we can discuss it at that time. But this piece of legislation, where we had less than 3 weeks to deal with a charter change, when we've taken 6 months or more to deal with bees, bike lanes, community gardens, we took less than 3 weeks to talk about a charter change. And then when some of us had earnest concerns, it still never came out of committee. Next thing we know, the administration is going directly to the people, circumventing the representation that's down here to vet, just like the committee's supposed to do for council, to vet legislation and make sure that it is equitable. We've been down here talking about equity, inclusiveness, and some of us, and I've even asked on this floor, and I've even asked the law department, do we understand what is our definition of equity and inclusiveness? Because it relates to everything that we do. Now here we share with you, we have a piece of legislation that discriminates against grassroots campaigns. And it benefits those with, and it will create a better chance for money to influence those campaigns. We've been in this council chambers. We've had people come and stand at that podium and say just that they give money to campaigns and they want to see things happen. And we've had members of committee talk about how that impacts. So we know the money, it's not a secret. But I think it's the thing that concerns me most with all we've got going on in this city. We know about the shootings. We hear about people come down here talk about the request for economic opportunity. And all the other issues that we have, this is the one that the administration chooses to invest all of its resources in, changing the charter when we had less than 3 weeks, couldn't even get it out of committee. We wanted to talk about it in committee. So yes, this piece of legislation, we had less than a week to respond. If you remember, on July 30th, reached out to Mr. Hardy and said, let's work together and find a piece that we could both agree on. That's in the minutes. Asked him that. Mr. Hardy said, get 9 votes and put it on the ballot. That's not the way you do things. There's a process that is going on throughout our city called deliberative democracy, where people come together to respect each other's opinions, to work to a solution or a compromise within the community so that everyone's voice can be heard. Shouldn't that same thing take place here within these council chambers? So, you know, here it is, we have a piece of legislation, we had less than a week to put it together. And yes, reached out to the law department, like I've done before, so that I can follow. And because of my concerns, because of other legislation I have asked about, that I couldn't get anything in writing on, I asked, since something in writing was prepared for you, please highlight it and get it back to me, so that everything could be documented.
Yes.
So where we are right now is that we have a piece. Because of the way this process has worked, that now, if we were doing this the right way, we would take time. This issue only comes up once every 4 years. We have more pressing issues.
Okay, Councilman, we'll just ask if you can wrap it up, because there are a couple other questions.
Okay, well, this issue only comes up once every 4 years. If we were doing it the right way, we would take time, like the committee asked for, so that we could have much discussion to make sure everybody was comfortable with it. Because we know in 2 years from now, the charter review comes up. But since that didn't happen, we came up with a piece that we felt more comfortable with. And so now what we're asking is, as my colleague has said, in these chambers, people said, let the citizens decide. Now there are 2 pieces. We put them both on the ballot. We would have much time for much community discussion. and then we can let the citizens decide.
Thank you so much, Councilman Neal. I do believe I saw Councilwoman Samples' hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to jot a few notes down so I can be very timely in my response. You know, I rise in support of both charters going on the ballot. Why? Because I think it's the democratic thing to do. It's the right thing to do. I think our residents should be deciding this. How can we say one charter is good enough for the ballot and the other one isn't? How can we sit here and vote yes on one and no on the other? To me personally, it makes us hypocrites. So for me, I just want to put it in the hands of the voters. I know they voted to elect me to come down here and represent them, but I think this is a decision that I think that they should be able to take part in. In the beginning, I've always supported the primary election being moved away from September to May. I mean, having an election in September is horrible. The day after Labor Day, no one's going to vote, period. So we can agree September is a horrible time to vote. But to move to November, yes, it gives grassroots campaigns enough time to get out there and knock on doors, and I'm a grassroots person, so I understand it and I get it. I get both angles. That's why I think it's important that we allow our residents to decide this issue. I just think September is horrible. November does give people a little more time to get their message out there, whether they have money to do it or not. But again, I just never want to do anything that makes me feel like I'm silencing the residents of this community or their vote or them being able to take part in local democracy, because we have to focus more on our local elections. I think we're getting caught up in everything going on in Columbus and DC, and we're forgetting about the things going on here at home. This is something that's going on here at home that I think we all need to really look at the pros and cons of both of them. And I just really just think it looks really bad when we can say one is good enough for our residents to vote on, but not the other. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Kamer?
Thank you, Madam President. I wasn't going to say much, but I just wonder why I'm here tonight. I was called for a special meeting, and right here in front of me, I have obviously the notice for the special meeting. A piece of paper from the National League of Cities. Another piece of paper from Yale Law School. Obviously, the mayor's piece that was brought in a few weeks ago had a lot of facts to it, had a lot of documents. Also had a speaker that came along from the Board of Elections to educate us and give us that information. So far tonight, one of the sponsors mentioned the one proposal would save roughly $200,000. Where's that information coming from? Where's the facts at? Also, it would increase voter turnout. I would like to know where that information's at. Where did you get that information at? Is it fact or is it fiction? Like I said, I just wonder why I'm here tonight. I have no legislation in front of me. I have no ballot language in front of me. But when the mayor proposed his piece of legislation several weeks ago, we discussed it. He changed the ballot language. I knew what I was talking about. I knew how to inform my residents because I had the legislation. I had the ballot language. Right now, I don't know what we're discussing. So I just wanted to raise my concerns in regards to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Kamer. Actually, Councilman Freeman, we're going to allow all council members an opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Okay. I just, I mean, in reference to the one comment that was made about, sometimes we'll talk 6 months about bees. And that type of legislation, though, whatever we vote on, it becomes rule. This is different than that. We were wanting to go to the citizens and say, so we were not voting in a charter change. We were trying to attempt to allow the voters to vote on the charter change. Secondly, and this was I wish I had said something the very first week. The statement was made about, I forget the exact language that was used, as far as, the real capital that a candidate has is those summer months. This came in July. If I want to run for city council next year, and the election's going to be in May, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. I've got 10 months to do that. So I feel that's somewhat of a weak argument. And I guess, too, the council said no, and so a bunch of us did. We got busy collecting signatures. And I, for one, working trying to get folks to collect signatures and using my vacation time here. I don't want to go back. I'm going to get the number of signatures to do this, and folks will really get to say if they want it on. It won't just be 13 people saying it. It'll be whatever the number is, 5,000 people saying, yeah, let's put this on there. So tonight, I'm just going to continue on the path that I'm on, gathering up signatures. We get the signatures, great. If we don't, it's a pretty good indication of what folks really want. So I think that's the path that a lot of us has taken, and without really having talked to anybody, I hope that's the path that a lot of us would continue to take. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilman Swirsky?
Yeah, I think we're being asked tonight, to approve an ordinance that we've heard that the law department has legal questions and shortcomings on. I think it's partly because it was kind of a hastily drawn proposal in contrast to some of the other things that have been put before us. And I really have trouble understanding how anyone could try to deny the citizens' right to know about party affiliations. To me, that's kind of a basic right, and it's a basic part of the democratic process, which I think is best served by the mayor's proposal, and I will vote accordingly.
Thank you so much. Any other council members who had not had an opportunity to speak as of yet? Councilwoman Sims.
Thank you, Madam President. Just wanted to rise and say, a couple weeks ago, we met. I guess my hope along the way, because the legislation was still in committee, was that there was time still to come to some happy medium. I know we mentioned before an August date, possibly, and then kind of giving some opportunity for the Charter Commission that's going to meet in 2020 to kind of look at the charter overall and make some decisions. However, we didn't really have that opportunity. I think I've been very vocal about my concerns about moving the primaries from September to May. I'm challenged really by both pieces, and I've been pretty vocal about that too. But I too am willing, since we never really had an opportunity to vote on the other piece that was in committee, to allow both to go on the ballot if this body would agree to that. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilwoman Sims. Councilman Kilby?
Oh, thank you, Madam President. First off, just so you know, this is not some kind of harebrained idea. I think I did mention that the city of Fairlawn has been doing what we're proposing since 1971, which is nonpartisan and no primary. Now, the city of Stowe, and this is what I passed out here, was an ordinance, charter amendment last year. And the city of Stowe had already had nonpartisan elections. And they decided to do exactly what we're proposing, which is to do away with the primary and just have a general election to decide who their elected officials are going to be. Now, that's what this is. Okay, I want everyone to know that. So it's not some crazy harebrained idea. And as far as nonpartisan elections, I think my colleague from the 4th Ward already did some research, and I think it said 70% of the cities in this country already have nonpartisan elections. 70%. 77%. Okay, that's even more. So it's not okay, citizens will still have a right, if they want to find out what party affiliation someone has, they'll still have the right to do that. Okay, and there's plenty of ways to do that. But it's not going to be on the ballot, so we'll end this game of, oh, I'm going to go vote.
Mr. Kilby, put the microphone up.
I'm going to vote
Let
for
go of
all the
it.
Democrats, or I'm going to vote for all the Republicans. That's really a non-democratic thing. And as far as like our facts, I think this speaks for itself. I mean, we all know, okay, if there's no primary, it'll save more than having a primary in May. And $200,000 is what we think, or more, it will save by eliminating the primary. That's just obvious. If there's no primary, there's no cost whatsoever. And it's also self-evident that if the election is in November, November is always the biggest turnout for any election, far more than any primary. We all know that. We don't need somebody from the Board of Elections to come in here and tell us that. We know that. And another reason why I support this, and I've studied, I've been a councilman for quite a few years, as you all know, and most of you guys have been around for a while. And we know the system. We've all been successful in this system. But the more I look at it, the more I think it's really, really not democratic. We've all benefited from partisan politics, but, and I think at one time partisan politics made sense in the city of Akron when you had two viable parties. Like if one party was abusing their authority or power, the people could say, well, we're going to elect this other party group of people. Well, up until the 80s, I mean, we're all Democrats. Let's just talk plainly. We're all Democrats, and we all know whoever wins the primary, the way things are, is going to most assuredly go on in November to win. We all know that. But, and really, stop and ask yourself, is that really fair? It shuts out all the Republicans and all the independents. And most of the voters in the city of Akron are independents. So they're not having any say, really, in who the mayor of this city is going to be or who's going to represent them on this council. So I think it's time to dispense with party politics. It doesn't make sense anymore. Last Republican representative here was John Frank. What was that, 15, 18 years ago? I don't even know. And we had Republican mayors up into the 80s with Roy Ray, and in the 60s and 70s we had John Ballard, who was a Republican mayor. But there was also Republicans going back. I think John Breaux represented Kenmore. He was a Republican. That was in probably the 80s. But if you really go back in the 50s into the 60s, there was a balance. And really, when you get down to it, what's the difference between the way a Democratic councilman and a Republican councilman looks at a pothole? There's no difference. We're not dealing with Medicare, Social Security, things like that. Those are partisan issues at the national level. So I think this is much more democratic and fair to everybody. And as far as somehow being self-serving for me, no. I've been councilman long enough. I mean, if I get reelected, that's fine. If I don't, I'll go retire. But it's not about me. It's about what's best for this city and what's the most democratic thing. How is our system going to lead to the best city government? And I think this is the way to go. Nonpartisan elections, and if saving money is so important, let's do away with the primary.
Councilman Kill, we're going to ask that you wrap it up. Thank you.
I'll wrap it up. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
One last thing. If people still have reservations, they want to vet this a little more, I'm willing to come back next Monday and have another special meeting if you want to do that. If you want to consider this, or maybe even negotiate and change some things. There's no deadline until sometime in September to get something on the ballot. So if you want to do that, but I'm really serious about good government. And I think this is good government.
Thank you, Councilman Kilby. Any other council members who have not had an opportunity to speak that would wish to do so? Councilman Mobian?
Thank you. I'm glad that everybody took an opportunity to come down this evening and take some time from your vacation. I appreciate that. I can tell you that until the mayor proposed this, I had never done more research or read more materials that have come from our councilman, who has just been firing off all kinds of information, and had never given it much thought in terms of partisan versus nonpartisan. And then when I started thinking about the judicial races and the school board races, and I know people can say that those are all different kinds of races, and I guess every race takes on a culture and characteristics of its own. But I can tell you what I'm truly disturbed by is that we do have one law department, and if something were sent to the law department that was not appropriate or had some concerns, it seems to me that our law department would have reviewed it and come back with recommendations to improve the legislation. I mean, that is the job of the law department, and I'm not really clear on why we are talking about things that are not appropriate at this time, because that should have been corrected. And I think all the council members that have stood up have said all the things that I want to say, because the arguments that we were given when the mayor's proposal came to us were we would increase the number of voters and make sure voters have access to the ballot and to vote on their representatives. The second proposal does that without question. You're increasing the number. The general election, folks, is always, and I underscore always, a higher turnout than any primary and any special election. And those numbers will bear out. Just go to the website. You're talking about saving money. If you eliminate the primary altogether, it saves money because you don't have a primary to pay for. Then we talk about the information that voters need. Voters get that information when you campaign. So I can tell you that I am a Democrat. I've always been a Democrat. I believe in the democratic values, and everything I belong to is democratic. I am willing to vote to put both proposals on the ballot with the understanding that I will take the responsibility to go out and tell the voters who I am and what I represent. And I think that is a fair and balanced way to do this. But with the, and you know, we've always talked about the overseas military personnel and people who live overseas. There's no question. They will have ample time to get one ballot that would truly tell them who's on the ballot. So it blows holes in all of the arguments that you use to put the first proposal on, and now you're second guessing by raising up all these questions that are easily answered with the second proposal. So all I'm saying is that if we truly believe in voters' responses, then let's put both on the ballot and allow the voters to make that decision. And I didn't realize until, again, all this information that Councilman Neal has presented, that 77% of the most populous cities in this country have nonpartisan elections. I had no idea. And again, this is all the material and all the things I've learned since we have embarked on this change. So I am for putting both of them on, and I'm willing to vote tonight to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilman Neal?
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to state, because a couple questions that came out. I do want to state that I did reach out to Mr. Bill Rich, and he has looked at this. Matter of fact, I was very appreciative. I reached out to him Friday afternoon. I got a response from him Friday afternoon with any questions or concerns that he's had. So Mr. Rich has looked at the proposal. But I wanted to state some things in regards to, we're all Democrats, and I don't know if any of you have ever read the Constitution and bylaws of the Democratic Party. But there's a key part in the Ohio Democratic Party principles. And really, when we were elected, I don't think we were elected to come down here and protect the Democratic Party. We were elected to come down here and do what's best for the citizens of Akron. But that being said, there's a key part in the Ohio Democratic Party's principles. It says, we believe that all Ohioans reap benefits when we as a state meet our challenges together. We believe in the equality of all citizens and condemn any discrimination. Our present system with the primary discriminates because they're not a Republican or a Democrat. You cannot participate in the system. And we have a 30-year history here that shows that the Democratic race, when the primary is over, that's who wins. Now, the reason why I gave you the Yale Law Review from Yale Law School and Scholarship Repository is because they did a study. This is from political scientists. And if you read it, it can throw you because it says, why is there no partisan competition in city council elections? The role of election law. And you can read it. I condensed it. It's only a couple pages. But it says, in the debates over the Supreme Court's partisan gerrymandering cases, Veth versus Jublier, and I just butchered that, there has been extensive discussion among the legal scholars and political scientists about the lack of competition in national and state legislative races when compared with city council elections in big cities around the country. However, the races in those legislatures appear to be intensively competitive. And what it's saying is that partisan politics has polarized federal and state elections. But in summary, when you come to the end, what it says is when that partisan politics reaches the city council level, this is what it says. Comparing politics to markets does not end the analysis. If politics are like markets, they are not like the markets for corn or some other commodity. Instead, they are complex, heavily regulated markets. Understanding the effect of election laws on political markets takes the modern economic analysis of an antitrust and industrial organization and like other tools as well. More effort must go into understanding the effect of election laws on various and different political markets that comprise modern American and international government. This paper is one such study of one type of political market. For this reason is laid out throughout this paper, barring parties that compete at the state and national level from competing at the local level would help create a competitive environment in local elections. Barring the partisanship that exists on the federal and state level from making its way to the local level would help create a competitive environment in local elections. And the introduction of such competition is dearly needed. Otherwise, our localities will continue to be governed by local officials with little democratic legitimacy that do not represent the beliefs of the local voters on local issues and that are extremely well protected against any challenges. This isn't me. This is an independent study from Yale.
Thank you, Council Neal. Councilman Samples?
I just have a brief question. When we came in here, was it last Monday? We had draft legislation to look at. Why don't we have draft legislation to look at? I mean, I'm sure everyone had something in their box. I just don't want it to seem as if there was no legislation given to us to look at and to read over. Mr. Neal didn't just come in here and just sit documents on our table and say, hey, look at this, let's vote. We actually had draft legislation, and I'm just wondering, where is it?
I'm not sure. Again, I was just handed this moments that I took my seat after 7 o'clock. So I think the best thing for us to do, we can actually ask Councilman Neal what he has put before us on today, because I don't even know.
Okay. It was presented last week, and when we came in, Ms. Raymer had the legislation. She had, just where she had the special notice, she had the both the draft legislation and the legislation. The draft legislation showed the conversation between me and Mr. Angeloni, right? Okay. And then the original legislation. That was all out for people to pick up while they walked inside.
Councilman Samples?
Can we get a copy of it? I mean, Bruce is giving me a copy, but, we got council people saying they haven't seen a copy of it.
Absolutely. Again, I'm gonna say it one more time. We were all given this piece, just as we took our seats. This is the only thing that I have seen. So if there's another piece, if there's another draft, I'm going to ask that the sponsor provide it to all council members. This is all we have. Councilman Neal?
Yes, ma'am. Again, the clerk had it out for everybody to pick up as they came in. It was sitting out on the desk.
Yeah. No.
Councilwoman Namibian?
I would like to move that we vote on putting both proposals on the ballot in November.
Absolutely. I second that.
So we have a motion.
I would
Councilman Fusco?
I would ask Representative Amobian to rephrase that motion, or I can make the motion if it's okay. Just that we go into council as a whole.
Yes.
And that's the procedure.
All right, so we have a motion to go into council as a whole. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. I will now have Councilman Fusco, Vice President of Council, come and take the chair.
Okay, thank you. We'll call this to order here. The motion is to vote on, well, we'll have to address these separately, and the first item, we'll have to vote on these separately. And the first item on the agenda, which was handed out before the meeting, and that was part of, is the invitation, the notice that was sent out. The first item is what we will vote on first. There's one question.
Bruce, speak into the microphone, please. Pull it up to your mouth.
Well,
Thank
I
you.
think we need clarification from the law department, because here's the deal. Like, it's kind of like a Mexican standoff. Like, we've said, we'll vote for yours if you vote for ours. But people might be a little reluctant to vote for one first, and then they don't vote for the other. Is there any way that we can combine these and vote for both of them at the same time?
No, it's just two separate pieces of legislation that is here.
Excuse me, there's a motion on the floor, sir.
Mr. Ed.
Exactly, to go into committee as a whole was the motion. So if the law department would like to address the question that we have to vote on these separately, correct? We have to vote on these separately. That's the law department's answer. Okay? So with that, the first item, is there a recommendation on item number 1? Is there a motion on item number 1? A motion on item number 1 is what I'm asking for.
Mr. Chair, I motion that we place item number 1 on the ballot for the citizens to approve.
Okay, thank you. Is that a favorable motion then? That's a favorable motion on item number 1, correct? And there is a second on item number 1.
Who was the second?
Was Mr. Kilby.
Okay.
Okay. Therefore, all those in favor of item number 1 signify by saying aye.
No.
Those against?
No.
No.
Okay, very good. Roll call. Roll call.
Roll
Mr.
call.
Keith.
Mr. Freeman. Mr. Fusco.
No.
Mr. Hoke.
No.
Mr. Kamer. Pardon me? Nay? No? No sounds a lot easier. Keith?
Nay.
Kilby? Milkovich? Mosley Sample? Neal? Mobian? Sims? Somerville?
No.
Swirsky?
No.
Vote is 7-6, no.
Okay, very good. The second item that's before you, is there a motion on item number 2?
Motion for a favorable report on item number 2.
Is there a second? Okay, very good. There's a second. All those in favor of item number 2 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? No. Very good. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Freeman. Fusco.
Aye.
Hoke.
Aye.
Kamer. Key. Kilby. Milkovich. Mosley Sample. Pardon me? Yes? Thank you. Neal. Amobian. Sims. Somerville.
Aye.
Swirsky.
Aye.
Eight yeses and 5 noes.
Yes, both items failed, although it was favorable on item number 2. Yes.
Motion to file items number 1 and item number 2.
Okay, very good. All those in favor of filing items number 1, I assume we can do that both at the same time, or do we have to do them separately? Okay, we will, can you please rephrase the motion?
I will. Motion to file item number 1.
Okay, very good. There's a motion to file item number 1. Yes, sir.
I want to make sure, what is the impact of filing these at this time? I want to know what is the impact of filing them at this time?
Someone from the law department can answer that. They're off the agenda at this time.
Pardon?
They would be off of the agenda at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, very good. We have a motion and a second to file item number 1. All those in favor of filing item number 1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Very good. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Freeman. Fusco.
Aye.
Hope. Kamer. Key. Kilby. Milkovich. Mosley Sample. Neal. Mobian. Harvey. Sims. Somerville.
Aye.
Swirsky.
Aye.
Item will be filed.
Huh?
Item will be filed.
11-2.
Motion to file item number 2.
Okay, very good. All those in favor of filing item number 2 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Freeman. Fusco.
Aye.
Hope. Kamer. Key. Kilby. Milkovich. Mosley Sample. Neal. Mobian. No? Is that what you said? Sims. Somerville.
Aye.
Swirsky. Aye. Again, 12-1. Passed.
Very good, thank
So
you.
it's filed.
I'd like to, is there someone who would like to make a motion that we go out of committee as a whole? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Now return to the council.
Either one back. Haven't seen that way. Yeah, I'm sorry.
You have to report it out, they said. I'm going to pass it to you to. Okay, so just at this time, we're going to actually just have Councilman Fusco just officially make the report out.
As chair of the committee, the report of the committee on item number 1 was adverse, or it did not receive a amount of votes for passage. And then there was a motion by the committee to file that item, which we did.
Okay. And item number 2?
The report of the committee on item number 2 was favorable. However, though, there was not an adequate amount to make it successful in terms of putting it on the ballot. So therefore, the committee recommended filing that item as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Councilman Fusco. At this time, we are adjourned.
Excuse me, Madam President.
Yes, Councilman Neal.
I had a statement. We didn't vote to adjourn the meeting. I did have a...
I don't think we have to have a vote to adjourn the meeting, but go ahead. I'll allow you to speak.
Okay, thank you. I'm hoping that, just as I've asked in this chamber about what is our definition of equity and inclusion, maybe when we get back in September, someone can please share with me what are the requirements for let the voters decide. Because I think this initiative, as I said, this was never voted on in committee. The committee took time, so council never voted on anything. This was the first time we voted tonight. The administration went straight, like I said, hijacked the legislative process and went straight to the street. And our concern about a May primary and the amount of money that would influence a primary is being displayed in this push to get this on the ballot. I don't know where the money's coming from, but it just validates our concern with moving a primary to May and how money will influence the race. But I'm hoping when we get back, I want to give my colleagues some time to think about it. In what way do we discriminate when legislation comes to give citizens a chance to vote? How do we discriminate, as has been asked earlier? One is good enough and not the other? Or is it just as was stated in the Yale Law Review, well, it's only good enough to let the citizens vote when it's to our benefit? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a motion for adjournment? Councilman Fusco.
I would just like to say, just in its simplest terms, it was very clear whenever the committee had met. I'm a member of the committee, and even beforehand, in terms of comments that were made, whenever the council would want to put something on the agenda, you need before the voters to change the charter, one needs 9 votes. It was very clear there was not going to be 9 votes. That was 3 weeks ago, and that is tonight as well, the same situation. Hence the reason why I have to believe that the mayor went forward with the petition process. In terms of participation, what happens is it's very clear that participation does increase in May versus September. With that, I'd just like to make a motion, we adjourn.
Second. Seeing no objections, we are adjourned.
This concludes the live broadcast of Akron City Council. Margaret Somerville, President Council, presiding.